Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you all for being here with us today to learn more about the state of transit in the region, where transit means business. I'm truly honored to be here. As Mr. Harrell stated, my name is Emily Reynolds. Joining me for a great discussion for this portion of the program is Mr. William Harrell himself, President and CEO at Hampton Roads Transit, Mr. Matt Scalia, and he's the Executive Director at Williamsburg Area Transit Authority. And then Miss Maria Tukowski, and she is the Transit Manager at Suffolk Transit. We have a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to go ahead and get started. But as we move through some of our topics, be thinking of additional questions, as there should be time at the end from you all attendees in this program. I'll let everybody get started. So first, I'd like to begin by asking each of you to give the overall state of transit in your region. And Mr. Harrell, I will start with you to kick us off.
Thank you so much. As I alluded to before, we are really focused in a laser manner to really improve the quality of service. What we've consistently heard from customers is they have to be able to count on us. Many of our riders have no other choice. So, I have a heart to improve service for the transit dependent while creating a more vibrant system that will allow us to attract choice riders as well. As we have expanded the 757 Express, which we work very closely with Bob Crum and others as we look to address the major regional corridors. We intentionally started that service on the peninsula, the routes 112 on Jefferson Avenue and 114 along Mercury Boulevard. We felt it was important because the peninsula did not have any 15-minute service. So we thought that was strategic and important for the region. We have seen a 41% increase in ridership in the first 13 months along Jefferson Avenue. That is exponential growth. We've also, as of May, started 15-minute service along the 114 Mercury Boulevard, and that has also shown a 17% increase. We are excited to have just very recently increased 15-minute service along Route 20. I'm looking at Ray Amoruso, who leads our planning and development efforts. We just launched that, and that is certainly the busiest route in the Commonwealth. Over 5,000 folks ride that on a daily basis. So we think that's going to certainly bear fruit, service coming from downtown Norfolk to the Virginia Beach oceanfront. In addition to improving the core service, we also believe demand response will play a major role in improving service. We've had some very exciting pilot projects in Virginia Beach and Newport News, and we feel that as the system evolves, perhaps microtransit can become a new mode of service that can help support and feed the overall system.
Perfect. And I know we're going to get into some of those as well moving forward. Mr. Scalia.
Thank you, Emily. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. So a little different perhaps for WADA. I'd say as we're coming out of the pandemic, we're good, we're not great. Pre-pandemic ridership was, we're about 80% of pre-pandemic ridership. Now, I'd offer that's not because fewer people want to ride public transit, it's because we've been challenged to get back to the same frequency we had before. And that's really because of lack of operators, right, and employee strength. Now, we are coming out of that. I'm actually very proud of the retention of our operators that we have at WADA, and we've been getting a good, steady number of people applying for jobs. So we're in a good position now where we believe in the very near future we'll be able to get to higher frequency during peak hours that we used to have prior to the pandemic. We'll get our ridership to where it used to be. But beyond that, we are soon to be publishing our new transit strategic plan, Evolving WADA. And this is a plan looking to 2030, if not sooner, really conditions-based, when we get the operators, when we get the buses, to be able to expand our services, and really, as William was saying, increase that frequency. The people who ride us primarily are those who need us. We want to expand that, and again, as he said, reiterate, we have to be reliable. In order to be reliable, we need to ensure we have a good employee base, that we can't be canceling some buses because people don't show up for work. So you have to have that's right, and then increase the frequency so people aren't having to wait an hour. And so I think the conditions are looking very good for us to be able to do that. I'd also like to reiterate, his comment about improving just the experience for our riders, and then we'll talk more about bus stop improvements, I'm sure. But we have invested heavily in the past year in other technologies for the riders to make it much easier. You can do it all from your phone, so it's not as difficult as experiences or intimidating an experience as I think some people feel it might be.
Thank you. Ms. Stankowski?
In Suffolk Transit, we actually just recently increased our service hours on weekdays till 8:30 at night, when we used to end at 6:30. This came about from comments from riders wanting to have a little bit more of an ability to be coming home later, people that have different job shifts and all of those things, or even somebody that's trying to get off work and trying to grocery shop before they go home. So we've seen some ridership happen out of that. With this expansion, we were actually able to increase full-time drivers from 4 to 8. So that was a really nice draw for employees. It's helping bring people into the door. It's kind of hard sometimes if you are working off of a part-time job, if you need insurance and all those things. So this expansion really helps to allow that increase in that full-time position, which is getting us more and more people in the door to want to actually be a part of our service. On top of that, we do operate on Saturdays, and that's still kind of a newer thing for us. We used to only do Monday through Fridays. Saturdays are very popular because those are the times that a lot of people that do work all week can now get out and actually do stuff on the weekend for fun. Looking down the pike, we are going to be beginning a connector service that's actually going to connect the city of Suffolk to Victory Crossing, which is a bigger HRT hub, to create a little bit more of that regional connection, which we've gotten a lot of interest in that, of not only people that are trying to get other places out of Suffolk, but people that work in Suffolk and need a way to get there. So that should be coming around in our FY26. And we will also be looking to start a commuter service that's actually going to go from downtown Suffolk out into Windsor as well, to serve some of those job areas out in that area as well. Windsor has been very excited to be a part of this with us. They actually we worked together doing a smart scale application to create this commuter route. And this is something Windsor has talked about since Suffolk Transit started back in 2012. So I think it'll be very nice to connect Suffolk a little bit more to a lot of its surrounding areas.
Thank you. There's a lot of talk around innovation, especially when it comes to public transportation. One area that's getting a lot of buzz is on-demand and microtransit. Mr. Harrell, could you expand and tell us what you all learned from that particular pilot program?
Yes, that's a great question, and certainly there's been a lot of interest in demand response, which is similar to an Uber type service where you use your smartphone to arrange for a pickup. As I mentioned, we had 2 6-month pilots, one in Newport News, which was an area that didn't have a lot of service because of the nature of the small streets serving that particular corridor. And then in Virginia Beach, where there was a lower performing route, and so they were very different service areas, if you will. Certainly what we learned during that 6-month period, we carried over 23,000 riders. Most riders used the service at least 4 or 5 times, so there were a lot of repeat users, and the survey indicated that people are extremely interested in that service, and it really filled the gap. Certainly what we have seen as a result, as Matt has mentioned, the impact of COVID, we've seen some commuter changes, and certainly in working with the TPO, we recognize that some people are working from home now 2 days. So that has certainly changed commuting patterns. So we believe smaller vehicles, the ability to react to a changing marketplace through demand response, I think will help feed the larger system, as well as having smaller vehicles that can be very efficient.
Sure. Transit agencies across the country are moving toward cleaner fleets. Mr. Scalia, if you could tell us what kind of progress WADA is making in the area of zero and low emission buses.
So I know HRT has fielded some electric buses in the past handful of years. WADA has not yet. We're probably a few years out. As a much smaller organization, taking a much more conservative and deliberate approach to this. They're much more expensive. The infrastructure has to be in place. That said, understand we recognize the need, the desire for low and zero emission buses. We do have 10 compressed natural gas buses, low emission buses that were part of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation fleet, which is now ours. We're operating those. And so our medium term is to reinvest in replacing some of those older vehicles and CNGs. It's technology that we're using. We have the infrastructure already. And then looking further down for electric vehicles, electric buses, and seeing how the performance, but quite honestly, the market has been difficult, right? One of the major manufacturers of buses, electric buses, just went bankrupt, so being a little more patient, seeing how this plays out. That said, with some of our upcoming major construction projects, including a complete renovation expansion of our operations maintenance facility and building a new transfer center in the northern part of our area, those will include the infrastructure required for electric charging stations when we do field them.
Ms. Stokowski, Suffolk Transit received a major federal grant this year. Could you please tell us about the grant and how it's used to help the agency with its zero emissions goal?
Yes, City of Suffolk applied for a lower no emission competitive grant through FTA, and we were one of 2 agencies in the state of Virginia to actually receive a grant. That grant has us purchasing 2 electric buses, as well as the charging infrastructure to keep those buses on the roads. We are in the process of designing an operations facility for Suffolk Transit, and as a part of that, the infrastructure for the charging stations is a big piece of what we're looking to do to make sure that as we're building a facility, we're already putting that in there so that we're not having to come back and dig up what we've done. So we are working through that process to get the infrastructure in place, and then from there we are beginning our research into the process of figuring out what is going to be the best electric vehicle for our fleet based on size and the amount of miles it can get on a single charge. So we are going to be ordering 2 of them. Our goal here is to have 2 buses so that we have one that can run while another one is charging, so that if we have to do a switch in service, it's easy to do. It's not like the bus has to find a way to charge itself for a couple hours. So we're really excited to see what we can do with our electric fleet. We figured Suffolk is a little bit smaller, so it might be a little bit easier for us to start dipping our toes into the electric bus world. So we're really excited to see where that goes.
That's great. I know this year HRT was awarded a federal grant to help build its Southside facility in Virginia Beach. Mr. Harrell, if you could, please talk about how the facility comes into play in the agency's goals of being zero emissions.
Yes, and I feel like a part of the Civil Campus fan club. She really helped lead that effort, her and Rayama Russo and our grant team. Jennifer Dove, I know, was instrumental, as was Keisha Branch. We have wonderful grant writers, and we were awarded the $25 million grant as part of the competitive program. This particular project is really important, the Southside Bus Facility. That will allow us to be able to expand to serve clearly the 757 expansion routes. It will allow us to serve Virginia Beach and Chesapeake with fewer deadhead miles coming from our Norfolk location. The facility will be designed and constructed as a net zero energy ready facility. So it really has the ability to be a cutting edge project. The new facility will be up and running by 2028, 29. Okay. All right, I bought myself a little extra time. But, you know, that facility will give us the ability to charge electric buses. And we've taken a very conservative approach. We've had a pilot project with electric buses, and there have been some ups and downs. One of the things we've tried to do is to take a conservative approach because, you know, we want to be part of the leading edge, but we don't want to be part of the bleeding edge. And clearly, you know, we've learned quite a bit, certainly the heating units, and there's been all sorts of learning so that once we, as Maria mentioned, once you put your toe in, that it will be a responsible investment, which will be important to the taxpayers. Thank you.
So now let's move on to what's at the heart of public transportation, and that is the passenger experience. I'll ask each of you to tell us what your agencies are doing to improve the overall customer experience. And Mr. Scalia, I will start with you on this one.
Thank you. You know, William mentioned it before, right? And Emily, I think you're right. It really is the heart of what we do. And I'm just going to guess here that the majority of us in the room do not habitually ride public transit. So I like to share the story of when I did recently, and I was out at the bus stop, dropped my car for an annual inspection. I'm out there at the stop. You can get my jacket and tie. I've got my briefcase down on my feet in the tall grass, and I've got all the school traffic going by. In fact, my daughter later said, "Hey, Dad, my friend called me and asked if she saw you at the bus stop." Yes, I was out there at the bus stop. So here, William used the word dignity, right? And I think that was it's a great word. So the way I felt, I felt humble out there waiting, right? Busy road, traffic going by. So we need to approach it with that lens. But it is very difficult. So we can talk about more buses, frequency, making more available for people. That's all very important. But then how do we make it a better experience? So I mentioned before some of the recent investments we've had. When I was moved here and then looking into WADA, and I got on the website and said, hey, okay, there's got to be an app, right? There's an app for everything. How do I, plan a trip? And it brought me to the transit app. Like, transit app, what's that? And then, oh, I already have the transit app. I downloaded that years ago when I was in New York City. So that's, and for our area, I think it's very helpful because people already have the technology, high tourist area. People come to Colonial Williamsburg or Busch Gardens or wherever. They've already got the app that we use to facilitate that experience. They're already familiar with it. They're trying to make it easier for them as well. We will soon be fielding mobile ticketing to where, again, everything right there in your hands. Just get on the bus, scan your QR code, and you're on. We have real-time bus trackers. So you take out the transit app, and you can see where all our buses are. It can tell you when the next bus is arriving. It helps our dispatchers as they still receive phone calls and tell them, yep, your bus is 2 minutes out. It allows us to hold off buses. Hey, buses, please wait for bus 1 at the transfer station so people can make their transfers. Please wait 5 minutes. And those are all ways, really keep people on their schedules. The cameras are very helpful. Our greatest challenge, bus stops. Okay? number one challenge. And that's I think where we really do talk about that dignity for people. And I'd like to give a shout out to the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transit for trying to facilitate the process. Because right now, and you know, Williamsburg Area Transit Authority, we are both rural and urban. So how that plays out is for the counties, York and James City County, we need to work through VDOT if we need right-of-way. But in the city, a little bit easier to coordinate with them. But there's still all these different entities we have to coordinate through. If we need a right-of-way, if we need an easement, then it's working with the private property owner and their lawyers. A shelter itself will cost $8,000 to $10,000. Okay, that's just the shelter. And then you have to talk the concrete ports, specific specifications, and hurricane-proof. And so I don't need to tell you all. There's lots of hurdles in projects like this, but the cost can run up to well over $100,000. So the process is very difficult. I'm encouraged by the desire by our municipalities to invest in this, and there are grants available to that. What we're trying to do is make the process easier so we can get them in place faster. And they won't all be shelters, right? If it's just a cover, if it's lighting, and I'll finish with this. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of in working with this organization. Is when we have our meetings with our operators or our safety committee, they're the ones that are bringing this up. I mean, we hear plenty from the community, but it's the operators who say, hey, can you do something about the vegetation at this bus stop or lighting at this bus stop? It's so dark. They really care about those passengers. So I'm encouraged to know that when you have the operators looking out for them, we will make progress.
So the City of Suffolk, for Suffolk Transit, we do have an intelligent bus system. So that means that we do have access to an app on a phone and through a web browser, and this does provide real-time information to passengers. I find that for a lot of people that have never ridden transit before, it can be a very anxiety-provoking experience. Not knowing exactly when a bus is going to come. Did I miss the bus? Am I really going to get from point A to point B on this bus route? So with that app, you have it in the palm of your hand to say, okay, I'm standing at this bus stop. I have 5 minutes till my bus is going to get here, and I can now look at the stop I'm trying to get to and know how long it's going to take me to get there. So that really does help that peace of mind for those first-time riders, and then even for your long-time riders. If you have things that could possibly delay service, Suffolk is very heavily train traveled, and long trains that move slowly can delay service. And with this app, it makes it so much easier for you to know when your next bus is gonna come. Same for the dispatchers. If someone's calling in, before we had this service, it was a lot of just looking at the clock and going, your bus should be there in about 5 minutes. And then the person's calling back when the bus isn't there in 5 minutes. Now they can very specifically tell them, you're good, you have about 15 minutes, the bus will be there, don't worry. To kind of piggyback off of the bus amenities and what that's like, it can be sometimes very difficult because a lot of times you are just trying to find the place that you have enough right-of-way to even put a bus stop sign. And we do know that occasionally those are not in the best places, and sometimes a person is having to stand there on this slant of a hill because that's where we have a bus stop. It can be a very difficult process to try to find the best places to have bus stops. With the city, we do have slightly less hoops to jump through in the fact that a lot of it goes into our right-of-way, the city's right-of-way, and so we can figure out ways to do improvements to bus stops a little bit quicker and a little bit more cost-effective, but it is still constantly something that we're having to look at. We actually have the same great relationship with our operators too. They will more than happy to call and say, hey, I have this turn I'm trying to make, there's a tree branch in the way, I can't really see what's going on, or hey, this bus stop has got this tree hanging in the front of it, can you come and get somebody to cut this down so we can fix that. A lot of our transit amenities have come from passengers talking to council members and them coming and saying, hey, could you look at this, because we have a person that we know is standing here, it's not the safest place, and we did in fact put a bus shelter in an area that was very heavily traveled by trucks, and you were standing very close to the side of the road, and now we've got a nice concrete pad, and those people can feel so much safer standing at that bus stop. With that, and also for security, all of our buses are equipped with camera systems, and that is on the outside of the bus, on the inside of the bus, and that is not only for rider security, but also operator security, so that we know what's going on inside of our buses. Same thing if accidents happen, that is just the reality of traveling 30,000 miles every month. And so when something like that does happen, those cameras are a good peace of mind to be able to figure out exactly what transpired in an accident, and even just to see what happened on the bus to passengers and those kinds of things if an incident occurs. So we try to have lots of little things to make the customer experience better. The biggest thing was that app, and people do really like being able to know when their bus is going to be coming for them.
Very nice. And Mr. Harrell, if you could just touch on what HRT is doing to improve passenger experience.
Sure, and I got excited and shared that perhaps a bit early, but you know, that truly has been a focus, and certainly nothing is more discouraging when you see someone sitting on a cart in a grassy median area, if you will. So as I mentioned, we are increasing the number of shelters to 600 so far with the additional funding. We have put 200 new shelters, so we have another 400 to go to get to the 600. Now, what we have added clearly is the solar lighting, so that people feel comfortable during the evening. As Maria has mentioned, the mobile ticketing real time is also part of that. Michael Price, who leads our technology areas here, and we've got a lot of interest in that. So studies clearly show if you know your bus is coming, even if it's late, it's a much better ride for you. So that certainly is certainly an added benefit, which we activated last year, and we'll see more of that. So it's a whole package of things, all focused on improving the ridership experience for our customers.
Sure thing. Another important topic we want to talk about is safety. I know, Maria, you touched on this. Agencies are putting an emphasis on safety for both the passengers as well as the operators. So, Maria, if you want to expand on some things that you've already mentioned.
Yeah, one of the things that did come out of the pandemic was a way to separate the operator from your passengers, just to have a sense of protection. So we began with just having a plexiglass shield installed after the fact that kind of gives the driver its own little cubby to allow them to feel a little bit safer and just to have some separation there. And now that is actually something that has become a part of what we do when we buy new buses, is we have that safety barrier there. So that's protection for the driver, but also protection for the passengers too. Because if something were to happen, you know, that can just turn into a big snowball effect on the bus. So then also the cameras help with that as well. Safety is always a big emphasis just in general. We very much so try to preach when you're going out on the road that safety first, always safety first. So yes, there might be a bus stop sign right there, but if as the driver you don't feel that that's the safest place to stop today, then you move to where your safe place is, and you just let your passenger know, hey, next time just be a little bit closer to here so we can make sure that this is a really safe process. That's the biggest thing. People want to be able to feel safe when they are being transported. So the driver is really responsible for the safety of all the people that are on their bus, and then outside and around the bus as well. So we really try to concentrate on all of that. And the same thing with why we try to create some of those amenities at bus stops as well, shelters and those types of things, because we want to keep people out of the elements. Nobody wants to stand at a bus stop when it's pouring rain, or if it's cold, or if it's super hot. So we try to do that just for safety, and the fact that, you know, if it is too hot out there, you could have a heat-related illness if you're trying to catch a bus, and we don't want that to happen to anybody. So we are always looking to see what we can do to improve safety across the board. One of the things that we are hoping to try to look into doing is our camera systems on the buses. They do record all day, but there is a way to create a live feed so that you can tap into your vehicles at any time and see what's going on a bus. So that is one of the things we're looking to try to maybe do as we start to replace some of our older vehicles, is create this live view that allows you to just have a little bit more oversight on what's happening every day.
Sure, thanks. Mr. Scalia, if you could just expand on.
Thank you. So the cameras are so important to what we do. It's important for safety of the passengers, safety of the drivers, so huge benefits from that. Work with local law enforcement when we get a report, a lost individual. Well, we can track them. In fact, we did this recently. We tracked somebody from upper part of the county all the way down, 2 connections down to Lee Hall, connecting in with HRT, right, and able to help the police in finding a lost family member. A lot of it is education too for our passengers. These aren't school buses, so there's traffic's not compelled. They're not required to stop. And many of them will try to pass the bus, even in no passing zones. We had an accident of a passenger once. It was, he got off the bus, and rather than wait for the bus to depart, he runs in front of the bus. Now, this is partly maybe trained behavior too, because that's what we do as kids, right? School bus stops, we go in front of the bus before it leaves. Fundamentally different with public transit. So he runs out in front of the bus as an impatient driver is passing, okay? Fortunately, he ended up being okay, but all caught by camera. But it did show us that, okay, there's an education piece for us. Make sure we have announcements on the bus. Wait for the bus to depart, cross at the rear of the bus, things like that. The bus stops are important. The lighting is very important. But I'll say internally, I think it's also important for you to understand, we take it so carefully. We have regular meetings with our operators, safety meetings. They'll have regular retraining for the change of seasons, inclement weather conditions, make sure they're refamiliarize themselves how to operate the buses safely. But then also it's an opportunity for us to get the feedback, right? Again, where are those stops that need better lighting or better positioning? Those operators are so good at keeping us accountable and providing a safe environment for our passengers. And then lastly, the operator shortage is important, not just in us being able to maintain our frequency of routes, reliable service, but also if we push them too hard, then it becomes a very dangerous safety factor, right? So we do, they are humans, they are very important resources. We have to take care of them, make sure we're not pushing them to the limits and in unsafe conditions.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Hare?
What we've had to do, and Shane Kelly under Ben Sims, who leads our operations group, we've significantly increased the number of security staff that actually work for HRT, because while we've had operator vacancies, we know that member cities also have had police vacancies. So we recognize in order to provide the type of security to protect our customers and employees that we've had to directly hire in some cases. We also have hired additional contractor support in that regard. So that will continue to be an important element, because clearly as we survey individuals, why have you not used transit? Certainly safety is an important issue. People aren't going to ride if they don't feel safe. So we recognize the importance of that. The other thing Matt mentioned that I think is significant is that as we have rolled out additional service, we've done it in a less aggressive way because of operator vacancies. So we want to make sure that we're not overstressing our existing operators, and certainly one of the things that we intend to continue to work with our union on is, how we can kind of spread the love, if you will, in terms of everybody picking up and helping out when there's a need to cover overtime. So anyway, it's a very complex formula, but certainly one that we have to embrace in a team manner.
Which I'm sure helps with retention as well.
Absolutely, with retention.
Sure, sure. Well, thank you so much. I believe we have a few minutes for some questions. I left my glasses over there. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to ask any questions of our panel this morning?
Grand Rising, everyone. My name is Dr. Claudine Kizar. I serve as the institutional director for Tidewater Community College. And one of the reasons that I am here is because we conducted a student pulse survey just about climate and culture. And one of the things that, a repeating theme in that climate and culture survey was about transportation. As you know, Tidewater Community College students come from all over Hampton Roads. And so over the last maybe month or so, I've been conducting some listening sessions with students to hear more specific concerns about transportation, just to get a firmer understanding. I'm an implant, so to speak. I'm from Chicago, so there were some things about transportation here that I wasn't aware of. We have met with Noelle, I don't know where she is, but thank you, and Kwam, and certain individuals from the HRPTO. And so one of the questions that I have, just with that information in mind, is what formula, so to speak, is being used to ensure that there is equitable distribution of those shelters? Because one of the themes, there were 7 themes that our students mentioned, and I'm happy to share those with you via email, if you like. One of the main ones was safety. What is being done to make sure that there's equitable distribution of those, of the bus, of not only buses, but also the housing of the buses, the bus stops, so that students are safe.
Thank you, and we certainly like to connect with you. We've had a pretty strong partnership with Tidewater Community College, and we certainly want to expand that, so we will follow up more to get some of the data you have in terms of feedback from the students. We recognize, and certainly studies indicate that transportation barriers are significant as it relates to getting to all sorts of resources like education, job opportunities, you name it. So in terms of equity, one of the things that we've done is work very closely with Denise Johnson in our transit riders group, and Commissioner Bullock is a representative as part of that group as well. So we're getting direct feedback from customers in terms of where there's a need for shelters. We also are working very closely with the public works and engineering folks with the member cities. We also receive feedback from community members. So all of that is considered in terms of where we locate our facilities. So we welcome that feedback and look forward to collaborating even more.
Matt, Maria, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add to that. So very similar. I'd say there's kind of 2 aspects to it. One, there's formal requirements we have actually as recipient of federal funds, and that's all through census data and other data to make sure that resources are distributed equitably. But then informally, formally for us is advisory councils. So we are reforming an advisory council that will have representatives from our key areas, with a student population, disabled community, et cetera. And this advisory council then would help provide us and our board of directors input, feedback for those needs.
Maria, anything to add to that?
We use a lot of community feedback from passengers that are out there every day. A lot of what we decide to do really does come from getting multiple phone calls about, hey, we really need this at this bus stop, or could you look at it, just even if it's just a bench, is there something that you can do at this particular bus stop? So we get a lot of community feedback, and that's how we try to figure out which bus stop to go to next.
Mr. Commissioner had a question.
Yes, Roland White, City of Hampton, Commissioner with Mr. Harrell and Hampton Roads Transit. Okay, look, recognizing each of you have unique challenges specifically to your local areas. But there's one thing I've been wondering, how can we make better or improve regional cooperation where, you know, we're growing as a region. These roads are breaking down barriers that once existed. So that's my question. How can we improve and do innovative things to make the regional cooperation work?
That's a great question and comment. I would say, you know, on the roads, bridges, and tunnels side, we've done a really good job. Bob Crum and the team working with regional leaders in terms of identifying those major projects, along with the supporting funding structure, you know, which includes HRBT improvements and so many others. Really, this event is kind of the kickoff on the transit side. I think so often, you know, we think transportation, we think roads, bridges, and tunnels, and we don't realize transit is part of that transportation ecosystem. So we have been coordinating with the support of Bob Crum. I use that name quite a bit. He's going to be facilitating shortly. But, you know, I think it's important for us as a larger region to work together. This really was the kickoff of that. In addition to that, you know, we are discussing, and this was a recommendation that came from a regional advisory committee, which is, you know, if I buy fare to ride WADA, do I have to turn around and buy fare with HRT? So we're looking at studying how we can have a fare where you can move from one system seamlessly. Certainly the technology is there to do it. We just need to work through some governmental detail to do that. So I'll turn it over to my friends to follow.
I appreciate the comment because what I've noticed, and admittedly I've not been in this space for too long, but I guess what I've noticed is when we have conversations across the state or in the region about development, economic growth, there's always great talk about expansion of the highways, you know, airports, et cetera, and bringing in jobs, all very important. I'd offer, though, there's two areas I think that maybe are brought in the conversation too late. One is housing, and then the second is public transit. So I would like us to be brought in the conversation sooner. For our part, I recognize the need for us to be trying to insert more with the you know, planning sections of our the municipalities we support. So you know, we try to get ahead of new neighborhood going in, potential for a bus stop, new sidewalks, bus stops, etc. But you know, I think the earlier we get in the conversation, the faster we'll be able to meet the need.
As William said, like, this really is kind of that kickoff of us trying to find a way to create that more regional connection between our services, so they're not so much separate entities as just a big transportation network throughout the Hampton Roads area. And as he did say, we are going to be really trying to start to dig into what it looks like to create a regional fare structure, and that will allow you to go from Suffolk Transit all the way out to HRT and to WADA off of the same fare structure versus knowing, like, okay, I just paid this fare, and now when I get on my next bus, I gotta pay this fare. So find a way to make it feel more seamless and more connected for the people in Hampton Roads. That's great.
Well, I think that this is all the time that we have for this portion of the program.
Got
If we
one
could
more
just-
question.
Oh, yes.
Yes, good morning. My name is Catherine Tyler Northen, and my area of concern deals with people with disabilities and accessibility. And working with a number of people with disabilities, one of the issues is the pathway to the shelters. And this question is for all of you, is the pathways to shelters, making them accessible. Sometimes sidewalks are cracked, sometimes branches are, you know, going out of certain areas. Sometimes there is a curve cut, but it's a little distance away. So what is being done to ensure that the pathways to the shelters, to the bus stops are accessible and continually made accessible? Thank you.
Ms. Pappas, I should have you answer that. You want to say something?
A little impromptu. Thank you so much for the question. You know, I would say that we are really, at HRT, we're really changing the way we're doing business. We are insisting that the 6 cities we put shelters in are really ADA accessible. So it doesn't mean just the stop is accessible, it means the sidewalk leading to it has the curb cut, or wipe down, or whatever infrastructure is needed. I can't speak for all the cities, but I think that they mostly also prioritize this too. So it's a process that takes time for us to do it, but I think we're making progress.
And I would echo that. There are certainly the requirements we have to meet and when we place the bus stops there, but I'll also recognize you're talking more, not just the bus stop itself, but everything leading up to it, and that's where the coordination again with the municipalities to ensure that we have that right is so important. And another shout out to our operators. They are our scouts, right? They're the ones that see the problems before we do. So having that system in place where they identify the problem and then we're able to coordinate with the right people to fix it. But as mentioned, it's never as fast a process as we would like it to be.
Every time we put a bus stop in, we do ensure that any of the new ones we've done, we've made sure that there is sidewalk leading up to the shelter so it is easily accessible. And we do routinely go out and look at bus stops to make sure that if something did happen to a sidewalk, say a route's coming through it, or something happened that's now gonna make it less accessible, that we will go through and repair those. So we do constantly go out there and monitor our bus stops to make sure that they are operating at like peak performance for people to be able to utilize them the way that they need to.
Thank you for that question, and thank you so much for allowing me to lead this great discussion. If we could give a round of applause for our